Recuerden que si buscan producto de Vampire The Eternal Struggle, pueden contactarnos en Vtes México a través de nuestras redes sociales. Contamos con el catálogo completo de Black Chantry y envíos en todo México.
Sean todos bienvenidos una vez más aquí a Vtes México. El día de hoy tenemos una entrevista muy interesante que llevamos preparando ya desde hace algún tiempo y en la cual queremos hablar sobre todo de los productos y las expansiones que ya se han anunciado y que se vienen en un futuro cercano por parte de Black Chantry. Y para ello, el día de hoy tenemos con nosotros al CEO de Black Chantry Production, Hugh Aseesing. Hello, Hugh.
Hello.
How are you today?
Very well, thank you. And you?
Very good as well, thanks. Just with a little rush because of all the prep and the time difference confusion. How many hours is it? Our time difference?
What's 6 hours between friends?
Oh yes, thanks. 6 hours. That's right. Well, we've been talking, writing rather, the last few weeks about making this interview. Recently, we had every kind of news and releases about Vtes from Black Chantry and from you. Since the 5B box came out, we had the print-on-demand cards on drive-thru, the PDF expansion officially printed with the Kickstarter campaign, and especially the upcoming pre-constructed decks of the clans Banu Haqim, Brujah, Gangrel, and the El Ministerio. Those are maybe the most expected decks because of the changes in discipline and sex that will bring to the clans, and we want to talk about it. So I brought many questions for you. I want to start talking about the design process and how you do work. I mean, from the beginning when you received the 5B books in Black Chantry.
Yeah. So I guess when we get the kind of materials from Paradox, we have a look at them. We try and think what we try do in Vampire the Eternal Struggle. So if we think about at the moment with our kind of 5th edition offering, we've got 5 clans released so far. So your Markavian, Nosferatu, Toreador, Tremere, and Bentru. So it's about adding more of kind of the clans, the modern knights there as well. And as you said, the Banu, the Brujah, the Gangrel, and the Ministry are coming up next. So it's about taking those kind of materials from Paradox, taking inspiration from the kind of other partners in the World of Darkness. So be they board game producers like Flyos or the RPG like Renegade or Onyx Path, taking the material they've got and figuring out what works for us. So we want strong starters that new players can enjoy, but do reasonably well with, but also, are interesting to old players. As you mentioned here, we've got some changes to some of the disciplines, changes to some of the clan names as well. So it's about making the new familiar, but also distinct at the same time.
That sounds great. We imagine some parts of the process, but we want to hear it from you and know how it is now that there is no more White Wolf properly, but instead some different companies around this dark universe, and how you make the game still feel so attached to the RPG.
Excellent.
We know that you are a veteran player of Vtes, so both as a player and as a designer, what do you feel about the sect and discipline changes of these clans?
It's quite interesting, particularly as a kind of a designer. It gives you a different steer. So if you imagine like the Gangrel and Brujah in particular, right? They've been dancing in and out of, are they independent? Are they Camarilla? Are they going to be Anarch? So, at the moment in Order Knights, they're Anarch. So it gives a bit more focus on that kind of Brujah, in particular, that kind of anger, if you like that, and that passion. And they're trying to get through. And I think the deck we've got coming out at least reflects some of that. And the Gangrel, I think it's a bit more about, not wanting to be under anyone else's control, and the kind of loners that they are. And with the Banu Haqim, we'd already seen that kind of move towards the Camarilla in Vtes before. So we had Tigurius as he merged to become an inner circle member. I think it was something ridiculous. Or Justica. So it's about taking that in a more kind of, well, here's a clan we can do more of them this way, and think about how we make that different from before. The ministry, I think, is probably the one that's least impacted because they're just master manipulators, right? So whatever they say they are is what they are at the moment. I'm sure they can be something else again to somebody else. Never trust the lying snakes.
Yes, I mean, yeah, also that. And the disciplines, those that give their clans a special taste doing weird stuff, sometimes stealing your vampires just for fun.
Yeah. I mean, like the same way they bury the heart outside their body, right?
Exactly. So, about the disciplines, are you a little nostalgic or something like that for those that are going to disappear?
Yes and no, right? So you can still use those disciplines, and we're still going to have those cards, available on kind of print on demand on drive-through cards. So they're still there, and you can still do things with them. I think if I look at them individually, so Serpentis was a really weird discipline. It had some cards that were really, really good fun because they did very strange things. So there is some of how do we make the kind of the new amalgams work, so that the combination of two or more disciplines do some of that going forwards. So there'll be some of that in the upcoming release, but there'll be more of that coming in future. I think it needs more people having a look at this is a good idea, this is a good way of doing something. If I look at Quietus, I don't miss that particularly as a discipline. It was, so if I think back to like 1995 when Ancient Hearts came out, it looked exciting. It had all of these nice big combat cards, but they also had things like second round. So like the original kind of Quietus release cards were horrendous, or they had to be used at long range or second round or whatever. They just weren't good. So being able to create new cards for the Banu Haqim, I think is more interesting. Being able to create new cards that some other people can use as well, like do the Tremere get access to some of the cards with how the disciplines overlap, etc. It gives kind of a new opportunity. So, particularly how I think the judges, I want them to be played in Vtes is like hidden, secretive. I want to say executioners, but like targeted pinpoint attacks. That's what I want them to be doing, and we definitely get an opportunity to bring some of those cards in now.
That's right. I mean, the thing you said at first is one of the wonders of this game. We have some examples with Malkavians that had dominate, then dementation, and now dominate again. And even when some consecutive groups does not feel like a real match, they are still playable in their own way. And the print on demand, where we'll see that you made some changes in a few cards, gives some interesting options as well, but we can come back with that later. I reserve all my Quietus and Asami jokes for later as well. Now, we want to talk about the Anarch mechanic itself. We all know the Anarch library card scheme, the three-way discipline specifically, that were designed in order that vampires from different clans with different sets of disciplines can play together, just like the Anarchs on the RPG. And wonder if this is going to change now that the Anarchs is a real sect that on caps, because with the time the Anarch cards become really good, cards that let you use more than one discipline like Cartan Vigil or Memory Rift feels very powerful for basic levels of the disciplines, but we accept that because in most cases you have to pay for that in the form of a Go Anarch action, convert or a master. Either way, it consumes you time and resources, but now that maybe it does not. So can you talk us a little about that?
Sure. So I guess there are two different things there, right? So from the World of Darkness's perspective, they're absolutely number two sect, chafing at the Camarillers' heels, try to make sure that young vampires are properly represented in the world. In kind of Vtes think, when I go back to the original kind of Anarch set that kind of LSJ designed, had lots of really interesting ideas, and I was reading an article today by an Austrian player, oddly enough, from I think 20 years ago, more or less, Stefan Franke, and it was basically around, I had lots of nice ideas as a set, but didn't necessarily work properly. So you had a load of three-ways in that set, so three-way discipline cards that were not, the discipline spreads weren't super helpful. It was hard to become an anarch. You had a few vampires, I think that, as we got into the release, we had a few vampires maybe that merged, were like an anarch. Like I think it was Sundown, maybe, started off life as an anarch. And I remember...
You mean in the Anarchs Unbound set?
Yeah, well, no, I'm talking about the first anarch set. So all that time ago, you had like Jeremy Neal and a couple of others. You didn't have very many anarchs, so it was very difficult to become anarch. You had to use the Go Anarch actual action card or the generic two bullet thing. So it was difficult, and then the cards weren't really worth it. And then you had, fast forward to like kind of Twilight Struggle. You had better ways of becoming anarch. So you had like the camp came out there, Anarch Convert came out there. You had lots of minions starting life off as anarchs, some of them powering off others, which was really, really useful. And you had a bunch of kind of three ways that were stronger and better again, because you could use them. And then with Anarchs Unbound, so our kind of weekend fan base set, that had some quite strong three ways, and some of them are more or less in clan combinations, or at least two. And you had a lot of kind of better tech added on. So I see what we're doing with these decks as like a continuation of that. So taking those kind of original principles of I want some flexibility in my disciplines. So they're not necessarily, so each level isn't necessarily really, really powerful, but the fact you can do, you can either combine it if you've got all three disciplines, or a little bit of flexibility of, okay, so if you're a ministry vampire and you've got obfuscate and presence, and you want to use either the obfuscate or the presence, it means that that card is a bit more useful than just playing a presence card or an obfuscate card in your hand. So it's that kind of dual discipline focus. I think that's pretty cool. And my favorite disciplines in the game are disciplines that do that. So I'm a big fan of Protean, old school vicissitude, similar kind of process generation as well. I mean, they all have drawbacks. Like a lot of the time they cost more to do things, to pay for that flexibility. So it's about having that balance and making it work. So I think we'll be pleasantly surprised, hopefully.
Yes, I think this is the big question in terms of design or even power level. Cards like Autocracy, those that only let you use one discipline, feels more about flexibility, put you in a three-way decision, but stuff like Cartan Vigil, Memory Rift, feels more like add effects to a single purpose, and in the middle are stuff like this card that I keep forgetting the name, the one that gives you some additionals with celerity and prevent and fortitude, and I think also Thaumaturgy Steel's Blood.
Diversion, yes, amazing. Yeah.
Yes, Diversion. Thanks. And I mentioned this because you can see it as a prevention card indexed with occasional off-clan celerity, or vice versa, as a additional strike card indexed with occasional off-clan fortitude. But some other times you can see it indexed with 15-20 diversions as the primarily and almost exclusive combat card, maybe in guns archetypes or something like this. Moving on. I like to talk about the specific mix of cards that we could find in the new decks. What will we see? Can you talk us a little about this?
Yes, so you'll see there'll be some cards that have already existed in the past. I'm not sure if I should give anything away too much, but I will say, for instance, Earth Control does come back, as an example. But you'll also see a brand new crypt for each of the decks, and at least a few unique kind of library cards for each of the decks as well. So I can't say exactly how many because I can't remember, but like a handful of new protein cards, a handful of new blood sorcery cards.
Okay, so but compared with the new blood and 5-bit decks where you split and put different library cards or clan cards in each one of those, maybe we could get those clan cards we missed in the previous bundles or decks?
Maybe so.
Okay. Now I understand that will not be spoilers here, so it is better to move on. We talk about the Gangrel and the Brujah and the Anarchs, but what about the former clans, the former independent clans and their Vtes identities? Maybe we will see Banu Haqim as a butter clan now that they are with the Camarilla, or the Ministry could become a more combat-focused clan now that they have Protean and access to the Anarch cards. Can you talk us about this a little bit?
I think those options are definitely out there. So the Banu Haqim will definitely get benefit of some titles, as an example. So that they definitely have the ability to vote more, and perhaps use things like traditions as well. So I think we'll see that coming. The Ministry, I mean that's interesting. Like you can definitely do combat with Protean, and that's definitely going to be seen in one of the decks at least. But you can also do other things with it, like combat avoidance and a few new things. So I think they have the ability to be quite flexible. So I think obfuscate presence and Protean is like a nice mix. So you've got the ability to do damage through bleeding. You can vote as well, and particularly if you're Anarch, you can get Baron titles out there as well. And then you do have the ability to do a little bit of blocking, not a huge amount, but you can do like a little bit of low-level blocking, and perhaps where cards have like multiple functions as well. That's always a nice thing to surprise somebody with.
Yeah, I mean, the undertext of this question is this. In your spirit of generate a known or recognizable feeling from what ultimately are brand new clans, we can build back some old Setites archetypes with these new disciplines, or all will be new?
They were always very good at bleeding before, right? You could do bleeding was really straightforward with them because you could just run two of the disciplines, and then you could have a bit of Serpentis as a bit of fun if you wanted to. Then you could do really weird trick decks with Serpentis, and that will take longer for people to think about how to do those and what kind of things this infusion. That just took a long time for people to come up with crazy stuff. And you could do vote decks before, right?
Or both really strong as well.
It's just you had a few crypts that do it really well, and I think that will still be the same kind of going forwards. The combat, I mean, like I love things like Tough Beast in the old days and stuff like that. So you can definitely do some combat going forwards with Protean. It's obviously harder with Protean to stop people doing things like combat ends, because they don't have there's not a native way to do that there. I mean, there are tricks and methods, but it's all a bit more difficult.
And what about Quietus, that weird discipline that makes what?
Well, they're supposed to be super combat monsters, right? And no.
No. Exactly. As you said before, it is a combat-focused discipline that keeps putting your restrictions on how you have to fight, long range, second round, etc. We on Masterface, and everyone who listens to us knows this, have many jokes about the Assamites, how they are the poor kids on Vtes, and how quietus is a discipline used for designers to nerf vampires. So yeah, we know that you have or had a personal goal of winning with a deck of every clan in the game, and you are the player with most tournament wins. So, in your words, with all your experience, the disappearing of Quietus, it is an upgrade for the clan. What will they do now that they have Blood Rosary?
Oh, would I say it's an upgrade? I would. I mean, despite being mean about Quietus earlier, I would say it's different, right? So you do lose some cool techniques with Quietus, and you do gain some new ones with Blood Sorcery. So it will do different things. It will do a lot of the same things as well. So it will do a lot of the kind of combat techniques, some of which in Blood Sorcery terms is just as bad, but we're not reprinting Cauldron of Blood because second round strikes that do 3 or 5 damage, great. it's not what we need right now. So yeah, I think the celerity plus the Blood Sorcery combination really helps. And their ability to get, they can choose their targets really well, who they're going to combat with. So I think that will be definitely something you see. Whether or not they want to do stuff with, you can also use the Blood Sorcery and play like Magic the Smith. So you do equipment, so you can go fetch guns rather than having to wait necessarily for like concealed weapons. You can also do a few interesting things with Bithaumatic Experiment if you really wanted to. So get pumped up with additional strength. So I definitely think there are some funky opportunities there.
Oh, that sounds very, very nice. It is an interesting combination. And now, talking about this, an issue that we, and especially me, really, really want to talk about. The design challenges around the new or changing rather disciplines. Everyone knows at this point, and if not, they will find out now, that every special or exclusive discipline are disappearing from Masquerade and disappearing also from Vtes. In the RPG, the clans with those disciplines are getting common disciplines instead, and the old discipline powers are becoming amalgams between two of the new discipline spread for the clan. So how this will be translating on Vtes? Because yes, we all know that we have amalgams here, those cards you play using 2 disciplines, but I think now with the reduced discipline pool, some of those amalgams could be played by maybe too many clans, and that's not the idea, I suppose. On Master Phase, we've been speculating about you can use some sort of clan and discipline requirement, or maybe a new crazy system for this. I really don't know, but maybe you can talk us about this.
I'm afraid you're going to have to wait a few months to check.
Oh, come on, please. You can do this to me. Come on.
No, I mean, I will say that there are a few different ways that we talked about. So like one of them is, that sharing of disciplines and using that as the amalgam. There are other things you talked about, can you tie it to a clan, either through having a clan requirement to play it, but you could also do that with like a kind of a kicker. So, if person of X clan plays this card, reduce the cost by 1 or something like that. So there are a few different options there, and I guess different options might work for different things.
Yes. I mean, now I think about it, and I think we saw some of these solutions in the past. There are some cards like a Mental Maze, where you pay 1 less blood if you play it with Setites. So that's it. But certainly will be interesting to see some cards with other solutions. And that feels refreshing for the game. But as you say, we have to wait for it. So that's it for that. In the meantime, I have some question about playability and game experience, because with the 5B box, you try to deliver a board game experience. Not only with this box contains everything you need as a new player, but also with a true balance between the 5 decks that generates a competitive and a fair experience through power level and archetypes. But with the new decks playing with each other, or in a mix and match situation with maybe the Sabbath Precons or even the 5B decks, can we have or can we expect a similar experience in terms of balance and power?
Yes, in a simple way. It doesn't always work perfectly every time, and I guess probably one of the biggest differences, right? So if you look at the disciplines available on these clans, there's a distinct lack of dominate or all specs. So it's not quite the same experience, but they do they hold up their own. They have ways to generate pool and ways to take the pool away, and they've been play tested against kind of the precons as well as against kind of like normal decks as well.
Yeah, that's true. Balance some decks without the top disciplines, I think it's harder. But it's another layer there, isn't it? I mean, the Sabbath Precons are really strong decks because those are some newbies friendly like versions of tournament decks. I mean, really winner decks. But these new upcoming decks are new in every way possible. You had to create archetypes from zero, and with those rare discipline combinations that we talked before, Protean, Offuscate, Presence, and Celerity, Blood Sorcery. So what do you think about the power level of these decks in the environment that you and the products of Black Chantry are creating?
Yes, I think that's a really good point. So those Sabbat precons were very special in the sense of you really knew what that archetype was. You could double up on certain vampires that you wanted to do. You could really focus them down into doing this. Like particularly, I think, I find like Parliament of Shadows, you take 2 of those decks, rip it apart, or even one of those decks is pretty solid. But if you take 2 of those decks and throw away some cards, you've got like a really powerful deck. I do think the power level of these is probably not quite as powerful as the Sabbat starters. Like I think those Sabbat starters are really, really strong. But I do think they're pretty good. These new starters coming out. I definitely think if you acquired 2 starters of the ministry, and you could build a range of things you want to do. You could double up on crypt, etc. So you could do all the things you want to do to make it a bit more powerful and remove minions or cards you didn't really didn't suit your style, didn't suit what you wanted the deck to do.
Yes, I think this year is especially challenging for playtest.
Yes, yeah, particularly this year. It's been a very horrible year for a lot of people. But we're a multiplayer game, right? In that you can play online, but like playing face to face is what most players want to do, right? It's fun and enjoyable, and if you can't play face to face as much, it makes it harder to kind of play test these. So yeah.
Yeah. We still think that you have some sort of lucky secret server or hidden tables in LAN nets where you play the playtesting runs, and we hope to hack it sometime.
That is actually a thing, yeah. So yeah. It's not that secret, but yeah. I don't know, I've never been on it, but there is a way of accessing that, yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
If you become a playtester and you join the ranks, and then Fernando will show you how to do it, and then off you go.
Yes, we like to join the playtest group. Well, with that, I think we finish with the questions we prepare about the upcoming decks, Banu, Gangrel, Brujah, and Ministry. But if you still had some time, maybe we can talk about some other of the upcoming products or things that you had been announced. I think the easiest one to begin is the so-called promo pack 3. Can you talk us a little about what you guys are putting there, or maybe what are the plans with which product are matching?
Yes. So promo pack 3, as I'm calling it, which is it's not the most exciting name. I think I'm going with the name icons. I want to say is what I've called it. So in the same way, promo pack 2 was called barons. This one's called icons, and there'll be some familiar faces coming back in that promo pack. And the way kind of the format works, you've got like a 56 card pack, and we print 10 of 5 cards to get you to 50, and then 6 slots spare. So we've got 6 kind of reprint cards that haven't been around for a while as well, focused on the clans in this promo pack. So this promo pack is supposed to cover Malkavian, Not, Toreador, Tremere, and Ventru. So that's the idea behind it.
That's really interesting. And what about the Fall of London expansion, the other set that you announced? I know that we have to wait even more for that, but maybe talk about the lore behind it, or really anything you want to share with us about this mini set.
Right, yes, that's based on a source book from Vampire the Masquerade, Fall of London. It's all about the Second Inquisition turning up, and well, I mean, it's not just about this, but it's about Second Inquisition turning up, Mithras trying to regenerate himself and resurrect himself as well. So you have some famous characters from London, some famous bits of landmark, I want to say, as well. So like a few new crypt cards for kind of each of the Camarilla clans, and kind of a few others in there as well. We're about to send that out for kind of a second playtest shortly. So that'll be out after the promo pack and after these 4 decks. So hopefully back end of this year.
Oh, and now that you bring out dates, when can we expect the new decks release?
So the new upcoming decks currently aiming for September. Just need to line things up. So get pre-orders in, and then double check printing dates. Printing has been slowed this year with everything, but you know, if we get in early, we'll be printing it in French and Spanish as well as English. So you'll have 12 kinds, if you like. So four times 3.
No Latin this time?
Well, we will have Latin decks because he insists on translating it. So yes, they've done quite well. So those will go up on drive through those Latin decks for it as well. This is hobby.
Oh, and for Fall of London, what are you planning the release of the set, or in what stage are you right now?
Yeah, so let's see how the second lot of testing goes. So we've added a few new cards in to try and really relive that kind of the Inquisition angle coming back. So we need those to go through kind of the playtest, see what playtesters think. So I would hope kind of December, but it depends if they come back with, oh no, we need to change this, or have you thought about doing it in a different way? So I don't want to say exact, because you know, until we play test it again, they might change their minds.
Okay. And looking a little bit further into the future, I don't plan going so far until the announced Sabbath book, but the 5B companion that brings back to the RPG the Rapnos, the Salubri, and the Simis. Are you currently thinking in what can you do with those clans, or maybe even when you bring back those clans?
Yeah, so that's our basic intent. Will be get the Ravnos out, experiment more on that kind of amalgam there. Get Zimisei out, Hakata. And we've got draft ideas for some of those. So it just depends what we're going to do with things. Like, we're actually working on something else before we look at those clans. So basically consolidating the clans we've got out and giving more kind of support for those first. That's what we're aiming to do, just to give a wider pool of cards for those guys.
Oh, and talking about the Rapnos, we already have the other 3 of the independent clans on print-on-demand, the Giovanni, Followers of Set, and Asamites. Can we expect the Rapnos in the near future, maybe with some changes? What else can we expect on print-on-demand?
Yes, so Vincent is working through templating the Ravnos as an example, and then we're going to put demontation cards up there, Limisei, etc. It just takes time, so we want to get it right. So as an example, when we put up the Giovanni Follows the Set and the Sombras, that was about 400 cards. It kind of took him about 3 months on and off whilst trying to do other things. So, we basically retemplate the cards. We send them out to playtesters because we changed a few cards. So we try, we've got these old cards, if we can improve them in a simple way that doesn't require any kind of testing, like dropping the price slightly, or perhaps possible in stealth if it seems obvious. Very simple, straightforward changes. We'll try and do those where we can. An example would be that Kali's Fang now costs 2 pool, which I understand is very important.
Yes, that with drive-thru is a very interesting approach to release product, because for one side you have a community as a whole, veterans as new players, that can actually get cards that are out of printing, and some of there are rares that even veterans with large collections have just a few copies of. And for the other side, you make viable or playable some cards that were awful. I've been trying myself stuff like Divine Image, and 1 point of blood makes all the difference for an interesting card like that. It's opened up even more possibilities in the game.
Yeah, I mean, there's 3,500 cards in Vtes, right? So one other option is to just design a new card that's slightly better, but then people are like, oh, you've wallpapered these old cards. It's like, well, we can flex on the old cards, and there are, there's a lot of cards that could still do with some improvement. It's just time getting around to them. I still come back to guard duty. That's one that must change at some stage, because it's basically unplayable as written. But yeah.
Yeah, other thing we are being speculating about on Master Phase is that drive-thru could be a possibility to bring back some cards of exclusive expansions. I mean, like live bonds or imbutes that are rare because of their short print lifetime. But it is better that you tell us what are your plans.
So I guess the first thing will be going through what cards we can put up on drive-thru. So we can't put everything on print on demand. So like some cards we don't have the artwork for. Some cards we don't have the artwork rights for. So I think you can see that where we've changed like the artwork for some of the Abyss as an example. And that doesn't mean that we can't give cards new artwork. It's just that it's difficult depending on what the card is. As an example, we need to sell like 1,500 individual cards. I think is a number I kind of quote around to pay for the artwork of a card. That's obviously not impossible for a card like Some of the Abyss, because it's quite interesting and it's not been out there. But it's harder for something like, what's an example of something that hasn't come back? like Karapu to the Mummy. So that hasn't been reprinted because we don't necessarily have the artwork for it. We could change that card, but it would take a lot of effort and time to figure out exactly how to change it to make it a better card. Because like a Mummy costing 5 pool is not a good card. People still like it because when you're playing a Mummy deck, you want all of the mummies, even the one that costs 5 pool. I don't know why you want the one that costs 5 pool, but I mean, it's not really bad. I mean, it's pretty bad when it gets entranced, and you're like, then it's bad. So yeah, we'll get Ravnos up first, and then we've agreed to get Demontation, Zimstay items up there, and Slubri. So how we were doing it at the moment was basically as clans or cards reappeared in 5th edition World of Darkness, we would get those legacy cards because we would be producing new versions of Ravnos, etc. So we get those cards up on print on demand so that they'd be available. So we need to think and kind of talk more to Paradox around how do we do things like hunters, like there's, how do we do things like Sabat, again, not there, like we need to see kind of what these books look like, and therefore what do we do with the cards as well.
Nice. So you mentioned something important there, the artwork. We had the Kickstarter with all the art changes.
We
want to know about your art direction as a whole. How you work with artists, the concept design, the role of Ginés Quiñonero, etc. Can you talk us about this a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing, right, is you find a genius called Ginés, and you make sure that he works in the university. You make sure he's got hobbies of Latin, so he's a full Latin speaker. That's very helpful. It doesn't really help the art, but it helps for other things. He also helps that you can speak about 4 other languages fluently as well. That's very helpful. And then he's got such a eye to detail. He really understands what Paradox are looking for, and he's got a really good working relationship with Thomas, who's our art approving manager at Paradox. So the way we kind of think about art is that Michael Ben will design a card, or perhaps it's come from someone else. They'll design a card, and particularly Ben writes these kind of really cool art notes. I can remember these from the old Beacon forum where we were doing like the kind of the PDF sets that we were just talking about. He'd write a little description of what it's doing, like this vampire is wearing this kind of t-shirt, might attach like a stock image of this is somebody I saw in a magazine once. We always used to have at the bottom of that paragraph I mean, this sounds silly now, but we'll always have at the bottom of the paragraph, this is vampire, the cards should be set in night, as an example. And we have that on the art contracts. There's a little paragraph. It doesn't say exactly that, but it's a reminder of what the World of Darkness is around, what the kind of the brand is trying to go for. And it's at night, it's a horror game. This is what we try to portray. This is, here are examples of other artwork. So it's about finding artists that kind of match that mindset. And I think we've done a really good job of doing that, of reusing some artists that we've had doing the game for ever, like Ken Mayer as an example. So he's been doing Vtes artwork for at least Spat. Not sure if he did anything before. He did some stuff in Ancient Hearts as well, at least, right? So, because I think the original commentary, I want to say, is perhaps his. So yeah, artists you've been using for 26 years or something. And then always finding new artists. So we get frequent requests about please have a look at my portfolio. I'm interested in doing work. And we just try and use a spread of artists. We do we have our favorites, all of us in kind of the team, but we try and spread it out. Partly because it's really cool to be able to help somebody showcase their work on kind of a printed card or printed material. A lot of these artists are doing this as a hobby, but others, this is their full-time job as well. So it's about you're paying for people to pay for their mortgages and for their their lifestyle, etc. So it's really good to be able to support that out there. I just think we've done really well. We've just had a lot of kind of friends in that art community, and this was talking about the Kickstarter, those PDF sets. We designed those in 2013 and 2017, and we went out and we got the artwork for free on loan. Essentially, we had a sort of a contract, but we're basically going out to these artists and saying, we haven't got any money, can't print the stuff, but we really like some artwork. And artists like Heather Crater and Ken and others gave us some artwork, and it's been really helpful then when we get back into print, able to go back to these artists and pay them to do more work, which I've really enjoyed. So I've probably not given you a huge amount of exactly how the process works. Hines can definitely do it more eloquently than I can, but that's my favorite bit, is I open up a little kind of group chat, and there'll be like a new piece of artwork of here's the sketch that I've got today coming through from so-and-so artist, and or sometimes you get like 3 sketches of the artist is thinking about these different things, which one do we like best. That is just so cool, because it's just so exciting what you can see of how someone takes your idea and kind of puts it into a beautiful kind of image like that. And sometimes you're like, I didn't think it was going to look like that. Oh, that's even more interesting. It's definitely the cool bit of the job.
Yeah, I think that is very important, because in a card game like this, especially with all the RPG art behind, it is important to have an art direction plan, and the decision to remake or actualize the art that had been donated for fans that also were artists back then when the expansions came out is also a form of tribute. But at the same time, including those individual pieces of art into a group of images that form a much broader project and with a meaning as a whole. So, congratulations to you, to Hines and all the artists for make that possible. So, we are hitting the end of this interview. So, we want to say goodbye with a more personal and fun question. Of the 4 upcoming decks, the Brujah, Gangrel, Banu, and Ministry, what is your favorite, and why is your favorite?
Well, that's a hard one, because obviously I love all of them equally, but yeah, I think I have to do Gangrel. I really like Gangrel overall, and I like the new cards in there. It's probably my favorite to look at and kind of think about how it plays. I very much like Protean as the discipline, so I think the Ministry is probably a stronger deck, because they've got presence to go with the Protean, rather than Fortitude and Arnhem to go with the Protean. But I really like the Gangrel. It's just, it's a lot of fun. It's very toolboxy.
So that's it. Thanks for being here with us today. I hope we could do this again in the future. Y gracias a todos los que vieron esta entrevista. Y nos veremos en un siguiente video aquí en Vtes México.